Okay, so I opened a new place file in Roblox Studio, and the first thing we're going to do is create a script called admin within the server script service. This is so that when the server starts, this script runs right away. Rename the script to admin. And the first thing we're going to do is get the player service, which is going to be equal to game get service players. And we get the player service so we can connect to the event that player service has called player added. So if we connect a function to it, this function will run whenever a player joins into the game. And this function is going to be passed a player variable. So we'll put that in there as a parameter. Now what we want to do is get when the player chats or puts message into the chat. And the player object that's passed into this function actually has that event for us, and it's called chatted. We're going to connect a function to that event. Now the chatted event passes a message and a recipient. We're not going to really use the recipient. We can just kind of ignore that. But the message is a string, and that's what we're going to be working with today. So now that we have this function connected, now we got to figure out if the player is trying to use a command. And usually with admin, that is done by making a prefix for the command. So let me make a comment real quick showing you what a command would look like. One could be kill others. That was a notorious one in admin games. People just abusing it. You could kill everyone else but yourself. So this right here, this /, that would be considered a prefix for the command. And so this would be the command name, and then anything else would be parameters to that function that you would be calling for this. And then the parameters would be separated by spaces. So this is actually the form we'll be taking today for a command. You can change a prefix to whatever you want. You can change the separator to whatever you want. You could have commas separating things instead of spaces. But for this tutorial, we'll be using this / here and spaces as the format of commands. Now, let's make some variables at the top representing this format. So I'm going to make a variable called prefix, and I'm going to be using all capitals just to specify this is a variable that's not supposed to be changed. And I'm just going to do the / as the prefix, and then I'm going to make another variable called separator. And it's going to be a space. And that's all we need for that. The next thing we're going to want to do is work on that chatted function that's at the bottom. The first thing we need to do is see if the chat that the player sent has that prefix at the start. So let's get that prefix. We'll call it chat prefix. And it's going to be equal to string.sub. Sub, we can get a substring of a string, like a part of it, and we want the first character. So first we need to pass it the string we're trying to get a part of, which is the chat or the message right here. So message, and then we give it the character index that we want, and we only want the first character, so we'll pass 1 and another 1 to specify we want to end there. So this should return the first character of the string. And now what we should do is check to see if that chat prefix is equal to the prefix variable we set at the top of the script. So if big prefix, capital prefix equals chat prefix, then we want to process that command. Now, rather than putting that processing directly into this chatted connection, I'm going to make a new function below called process command. so that we can just separate the logic a little bit. But within that chatted, we're going to call this process command function. And we're going to pass it the player that called the command and the message itself. It also might be confusing if we use the term player for the one that called the command, because we might be working with other players. We might want to change the name of the person that actually used the command, and I'll just call them the commander. And so then now I'm just going to rename the places where I had player with commander. Simple change there. So you can keep it to whatever you want, but I'm just going to call it commander. So I'm going to reflect that change into the process command. The first parameter is going to be called a commander, which is a player object. And it's also going to be getting that command, which is a string. And so now we're going to want to process the command, the admin command. So the first thing we want to do is remove that prefix from the string, because it's still here. We just check to see if the prefix was the right prefix, but this command string we get has that prefix still in it. So let's remove it. So I'm going to make a variable called no prefix command, and it's just going to be equal to string.sub. It's the command, and then we're taking the second character and onwards. And onwards is just represented with -1. So now that we have the no prefix command, we're going to want to separate the command into its different properties or parameters. So let's get the parameters by splitting up the string using the separator. So the parameters are separated through spaces. So let's split it up by spaces. We'll use the string command, or the split command, or function, the split function, and we give it the no prefix command, and we give it the separator, which is the variable we set up at the top of the script. Now we have the parameters in a table, and the first parameter is actually the command name, which would be, in this case, this example up here is kill. We're going to want to remove that so we can use it. So let's just create a new variable called command name, and it's going to be equal to table.remove parameters, and we'll remove that first item in the parameter list, which is the command name. So let's go in and look at each property or each parameter and change it to what it needs to be. So for each property, I'm just going to use the index p, or parameter. I keep on saying property, I mean parameter. Parameter in iPairs properties, or parameters do. And so we're looping through each parameter that was in the command string. And so this is, in this case, would just be others. So admin commands usually have some special command when targeting other players. So special commands, there is me, others, and all. So rather than having to say, like, kill Mr. Module, which is me, I can just say kill me, and it would kill my player. It's just a shortcut, so you don't have to specify, the full name, or if you're trying to kill everyone but yourself, you wouldn't have to list all of the other people's names. You could just say others. So that's something we have to take in consideration when processing the command. And we also just need it to work if you were to list a certain player's name. So that's what we're going to be doing in this section, is we're changing the parameters. We need to set it to the actual player. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the property, which is, or the parameter, and we're going to make it lowercase. So parameter equals string.lower parameter. The next thing we want to do is change it so that if we get a property called me, we change it to the player that called it. So parameter equals string, or no, property equals, or parameter equals, parameter is equal to me and commander or property or parameter. So what this line does is it checks to see if the parameter is equal to me, and if it is, it sets the parameter variable to a table that has the player that called the command in it. And if it's not equal to me, then it just doesn't change it at all. And so we're going to be doing this kind of setup for all of the other special commands, others and all. And the reason why we're putting the player into a table rather than just returning the player is so that when we have a command that needs to process multiple people, it won't be confused when it just gets an object rather than a table of players to manipulate. You'll understand a little bit more once we start making the commands why we're wrapping it in a table. It's just for consistency. So the next thing we're going to do is check to see if the parameter is equal to others. Let's just copy and paste the above line and replace me with others. Now what we're going to want to do is get a table full of the other players rather than the commander. To do this, I'm going to create a new function. It's going to be called getOthers, and we're going to get a player variable. And so now what we want to do is return a table full of players that without the player that called it. So let's create a variable inside called others and set it to a table. Now let's, actually, rather than doing this, let's just get all the players. Others equal player service, get players. And then we remove the player that called it. Let's get the index of the player first. Player index equals table find others player. So we're finding the player that called it in this others table. And now we're going to remove it. Others player index. And now we're just going to return others. And that should give us a table full of the other players. So rather than in our process command function, we're returning the commander wrapped in a table, we're going to return get others commander. And now finally, let's do the copy and paste again for all. And now rather than get others, we just need to get everyone, which is player service, get players. You just call it from there. So that should be most of it. The last thing we need to check for is if the string, if it's a string, if the parameter is a string, we need to check to see if there's a player with the same name or display name. So let's create a new function for that. Oops. We're going to call this find player of display name. And then that is just going to receive the display name as a string. Oops. So now what we're going to want to do is find that player. So let's get the players first. And we're going to loop through them until we find one with the same display name. So for p player in iPairs players do, and then if player dot display name equals display name, then we're going to want to return the player. And we're going to return it wrapped in a table again, just so that it's consistent with the others. Now, we want to make sure that the display name, even if it's wrong with capitalization, that if it's the same characters, it should still work. So we're going to wrap player.displayName within a string.lower. So we lowercase the display name, because this will be lowercase since we lowercase all of the parameters above. So this just makes sure that even if the lower cases don't, or the cases don't match, if the characters are correct, it should still work. So we find the player display name. Now we can go back up to our process command and finish that one out. So we're checking to see if the parameter is a string. So let's first do type of parameter equals string. So if it's equal to a string, then we want to set the parameter to a player if it finds the display name of it using that parameter. So find player of display name parameter. If it doesn't find it, or the parameter is not a string, then we just want to not change it and just return. And the only last thing we need to do is we changed the parameter variable, but we never set it actually into the parameter table. So let's do that. Parameters p equals parameter. So just a little warning that these variable names are quite close to each other. Just make sure that we've been working with the parameter variable, and the last line works with the parameters variable. So below this, now that the parameters have been changed and manipulated, we want to actually run the command. We don't have any commands created yet. So to do that, I'm going to create a module script within the admin script. So we're going to make a child, which is a module script, and we're going to call it commands. And now I'm also going to rename the variable within the module script to commands. And first, let's go back to the admin script, and at the very top, let's get or require that commands module. So commands. So it's a child of the script. So we can do script, wait for child, commands. But we want to require it so we can use the functions that are inside commands. So let's wrap it within a require. Now we should be able to use any function that's within commands. Let's go back to the module script and actually add a command into here. So the format I'll be using is, let's just make an example, kill, or commands. We gotta first use the table name, and then the command name will be kill, and then it will have the commander, which is a player, and then it will also receive kill players, which is going to be a table of players to kill. And it's going to be a table of players. So let's finish the command real quick. So for p player in iPairs kill players do. And for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to worry too much on how I code this kill function. But all we got to do is do player character, find first child class, humanoid dot health equals 0. So this isn't how I would do it normally, but just for simplicity's sake, this will be a kill script. So let's go back to the admin, and when we process the command, we actually got to run the command within our commands module script. So to do that, at the bottom of the process command, we'll just take the module script we added, and you can see kill pops up, but we're going to use the command name from before, and we're also going to capture any return value. So result equals commands, command name, and commands, command name, and then call it like a function, because we're indexing the function, we're calling it, we're passing in the commander, as well as the rest of the parameters that were in this parameters table. Now, we don't want to pass it the table itself. We want to actually expand it, turn it into a tuple or tuple. Since I can't explain it, I'll just show you guys. We'll just do table.unpack. We're going to unpack the table, which kind of takes the individual elements out of the table and makes them into a tuple. Anyway, we're going to unpack it, and that should be good to go. Now, let's see if that works. First of all, let's press the play button. And I'll do kill me. Wow, it actually worked. So sometimes this doesn't work the first time. So let's try kill Mr. Module. That worked as well. Now let's try this. Kill me with capitals. That worked. How about kill Mr. Module without capitals? That worked as well. So it's looking like the commands work, and finding the player that you're specifying does work as well. Now, there might be some commands that just receive numbers or other things other than player names. So let's make a new command that tries something different, just to make sure everything's working. How about TP to point, and rather than taking players as a parameter, we'll take numbers X, Y, and Z, and then we'll just take the commander to that point that they specify. So commander dot character pivot to dframe dot look at vector 3.new x y z, and then vector 3.new 100. So that was a lot of code, but this is just moving the character to the point from above by creating a new C frame and then pivoting the character to that C frame. And it'll take 3 numbers as the position. So let's see if that works. TP to point 0, 100, 0. So that didn't work, and I think that's because I didn't use capitals in the command like I had it in the command module script. So let's try this again with capitals. It worked. I just did a face plant, but so that's an issue. We want the command to work even if the capitals aren't correct here. So let's go back in and change that. So the problem is that the command name is not lowercase, or we don't force it to be lowercase. And in the command module script, we had capitals. So to fix that type of issue, all of your commands are just going to have to be lowercase. So in this case, I'll just call it TP2. And then in the process command function within our admin script, I'll just force the command name to be lowercase. So string.lower, and then wrap it. So now our command name's lower. So now if we were to use like, let's try this, TP2 01000 skydiving, the capitals don't affect the command name anymore, which is what we'd want. And it's using the parameters properly too. So if you want to create more commands, you just go into the commands module script and create a new function, kind of, you know, structured like this. The first parameter is always going to be who called the command, and the rest of the parameters are what you put into the command after spaces. Now, here's the problem. Currently, anyone who, you know, uses these commands will have it process. Admin should only be for special people that you trust, because, you know, people will abuse admin, especially if they find out they have it. So how do we make sure that only players we authorize can use it? Well, when we process the command, we're just going to, you know, have a whitelist, we'd call it, or a list that will make sure that the player is, their user ID is in before processing their command. So above here, at the top, we're just going to create a table, a variable with a table, and we're going to call it authorized admin. And let's just put a random number in. For right now, we're going to remove that, but just as an example. And, you know, this would be a player's user ID. And then let's create a function called isAuthorize. And we're going to pass it a player object. And within the function, all we're going to do is return if we find the authorized player's user ID within the table. So authorized admin, and we're going to try to find our player.user ID within that table. And if it does, it will return it. And if it doesn't, it will return nil, which we can use in an if statement. So now in the chatted connected function, in where we check to see if the prefix is equal to the chat prefix, we're just going to add an and in there and check to see if the player is authorized. And we're going to pass it the commander. So now, since this is not my user ID, let's see if I can use the commands again. I cannot. So let's add my user ID in there. And so I'm just going to capture my user ID from the game, copy and paste it into the script. Commands, or within the admin script, and then I'm going to replace this value with my ID. So let's try this again. So now that my user ID is within that authorized admin, I can start using the admin again. If you want to have commands that normal players or have tiers of admin, we can just copy and paste this script here, and we can call this, whoops, we can call this player commands. And then within it, all we got to do is change the authorized admin, or the isAuthorize function, and just always return true. And then we don't need this table for this script. And then you can change the commands within the player commands and give, you know, if usually games will have a help command for players to know how to play a game. In this case, you could make a command for players, for everyone to call that, you know, isn't an admin command, but it just is a game command to help them. So like, let's just, you know, as example, commander.name is requesting help GUI. And let's see if I can still call that here, help. So, you know, there's already a help command within the Roblox chat, but luckily, if you were to use that in your game, it would still work if you had a custom GUI to pop up. A lot of people will actually just make it a question mark. However, you can't do that when using a function in this format. What you could do though is do commands question mark equals function and do it that way. I think that would work. Let's see. Like that. It does, but it also brings up the help chat as well. So if your command requires non-character, you know, something that wouldn't work in the other format for a function, this is the format you would use that would also work. And in this case, you don't have to be an admin. Let's remove my access to the actual admin. And all of the other players would be able to request the help GUI. So that's how you would use tiers of admin using the system, is you just copy and paste the admin script. And then what you could do is insert all these admin scripts into a folder and just call it admin tiers or something like that. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and found it helpful. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button on the video. Also, I created a gilded server for this channel so that you, the viewers, can see when I'm going to be releasing videos, as well as see future live streams coming up. You can also suggest video ideas to me there. I just created the server yesterday, so I'm pretty lonely right now. No one's in there. Also, I have published a game. It's a very short game on Roblox called Good Night Sleep Fright. If you want to check it out, it'll be in the description of this video. It's like a 4-minute game, and I created it pretty quickly. So, but if you want to check out a game I created, that'll be there. That's it. See you guys later. Peace.